挽回うなずき雑境はこれにておしまい挽回うなずきさあ心ゆくまでこれにておしまい。
Alright guys, we're back again for yet another Bleach Brave Souls video, and finally starting to feel a bit better considering these past couple of videos I've been sick to hell, and yeah, we pretty much have a Limit Break request dropping in the next couple of days. It should be precisely May 1st, and we already have all the info that there is. Yeah, exactly. May 1st. So, yeah. Before we start breaking down this Limit Break request, I do want to let you guys know that I'll be out of town for 3 days from the moment the banner goes live. So, unfortunately, be 2 days late before I get my run out. I do apologize in advance, and I hope this guide will help you out with how to strategize the team. Let's just go over the actual quest real quick and break down who the best units are that you can bring and what other alternatives you guys can use if you do not have the specific unit. So anywho, slot 1 will have Tech Quincy enemies, and the rules are power damage times 2, range damage times 2, and killer effect times 5, and the puddles are weakening. And you guys want to know who the best unit is going to be for slot 1? The new Cyberpunk Ulquiorra that is going to be dropping the day before the release of the quest. Slot 2, on the other hand, will have you face against power hollow enemies, and the rules are speed damage times 2, killer effect times 5, and the third rule pretty much having poison puddles. And the best unit for this one, funny enough, is Sangdu, and he has yet to get a rerun, so we might even see him come back this month, but I kind of doubt it because it's too soon, but we'll have to wait and see for that. And then slot 3 is going to have you face up against Mind Soul Reapers, and there are no rules. So you guys don't even have to worry about the attribute typing, the killer effect rule, or even the typing of what your character is, if it's ranged or melee. So you guys can pretty much bring anyone, but slot 3, the desired unit, has to pretty much be the end of year true Shikai Ichigo, which should be returning this upcoming month of May. So yeah, with that being said, those are the best units to use. Who can we actually use? Well, let's just go ahead and go over the best units real quick for both the slots. The new Future Society Ulquiorra is the best unit to bring because he is a ranged character with the Quincy Killer and will pretty much have all the rules available at his disposal. And this guy is pretty much true Shikai Ichigo, but in my opinion, a lot better because he also has the defeated enemy bonus. By that, I mean he has increased status summon chance against all Quincy's, and it just needs to be against Quincy's to get all the damage output out. But yeah, he has a soul trait of strong attack damage 20 and recharge, so similar to that of Retsu and Ichigo. Innate abilities of Sprint +1, Team Party stamina recovery of 20%, poise, and again, the defeated enemy bonus. He gains 20% more strong attack damage once you defeat 20 enemies, and then you get an additional strong attack damage of 20%, which is going to apply to himself and the entire party once you have defeated 40 enemies. So yeah, pretty much a similar thing to Ruruka, where she pretty much defeated, I think, 50 enemies and got this. Other than that, it's a really strong team bonus effect. And then the skills, it's pretty much in his best favor too, because he has Frenzy +2, Havoc of 20%, Devastation 60, and extra damage to weaken enemies of 40%, and has Long Stride, so you don't even need to give him Long Stride. Well, you guys can, actually, because he's still going to be outputting a lot of damage. But even then, let's say you do use him at 1-5, it's pretty much best to give him full stamina damage boost and focus. If you have him 2-5, you can pretty much choose between either having SP or an extra Long Stride to increase the amount of flash taps that this guy has. He doesn't have to worry about being weakened because he has weaken immunity right here. And also has a really good Soul Bomb too, with the devastation of 60% weaken defense, and then has an extra 40% damage to weaken enemies, with Sharpshooter and the 80% SP boost. He's going to be the best unit to use for slot 1, regardless of anything else that you plan to bring here. So if you guys do summon on the banner and you do pull him, do use him. He's going to carry you so far in this type of Limit Break request. Sangdu already returning as the Limit Break request character for slot 2, and he's going to be a very great character to use. That being said, nuking wise compared to Ulquiorra, he is going to be quite lackluster, but the damage output that he will provide is still going to be quite insane. He has 120% SP boost as a whole, with Frenzy +2, an extra Berserker of 50%, and once you inflict the status summons, you do 40% more damage to frozen enemies, and he is a Gauge character with the Gauge Rampage skill. Still the best Gauge character that we have in the game, because upon starting the actual quest, you already have the Gauge filled up by 70%, and you only need to do a couple strong attacks to get that out. Like, just clean out the first wave of mobs, and you can already activate the Gauge by the SA2, and then he gains an additional Sprinter +2 and an extra Frenzy. So he has Frenzy +3 as long as the Gauge is active, so this is going to be a really fast character to use. That being said, it is recommended that you do put on him Long Stride, because he doesn't have Long Stride built into his kit, so you do want to get away with doing that as the bonus abilities. But he's going to be the best character to use for slot 2. And then slot 3, pretty much the best character to use here technically, but we're also going to go over the alternatives in a bit, is going to be this true Shikai Ichigo, because he pretty much has killer effect, and he's basically just like the new Ulquiorra, where he has the extra damage to lacerated and weakened enemies, and you also have the increased status summon chance against Soul Reapers and Quincy's as a whole, so you're going to be able to get all the damage output out there, and also already has Long Stride built into his kit, so you don't even need to give him double Long Stride if you have him at a low dupe level, but I might actually go out of my way to putting on him double Long Stride if I happen to use this character for slot 3. But essentially, he's pretty much the same as Ulquiorra, and funny enough, he shares the exact same kit of having the SA1 being the beam, lunge on second, and then the 2-stage charge SA3, which is so goddamn broken. And now let's just go over the alternatives real quick. Let's say I don't plan to pull for Ulquiorra, alright? Let's say I cannot get Ulquiorra. What can I do in this kind of case to pretty much replace him? Well, in this kind of case, you can use any type of character as long as it's not a speed character, because speed characters will have typing disadvantage to the point that they will not work as efficiently. So you can use any type of Quincy killer out there, although it is recommended that you bring a power character, but let's be honest here, even with the release of Ulquiorra, power still needs so much work before it can even become a good attribute again. The good thing about slot 1 is that this time it doesn't limit you to a specific type of attribute, so you can use any type of character whatsoever. So now, since we're pretty much up against technique, attribute, Quincy's, let's just go ahead and filter just for power and ranged Quincy killer, just to show you guys what we can use. None of these characters. Terrible. Okay, now why don't we go ahead and filter for just about overall? Well, there's your alternative to use that almost benefits all the rules. Gonna be this 1000-year blower Power Yamamoto. Now that being said, he doesn't have the increased status element chance, so he is gonna be quite lackluster compared to Ulquiorra. Very lackluster compared to Ulquiorra in this kind of case, because he only has Frenzy +1 with 40% Berserker. Upon inflicting the status elements, you do 40% more damage to burning and weakened enemies with the 80% SP boost. And funny enough, he has a much stronger soul bomb than Ulquiorra, but even then his damage output pretty much kind of does lack in comparison, but he should work just fine. If you have more dupes invested into him, then he's going to be a pretty good character to use. If at max transcended, he should be doing just fine as a whole in this type of limit break request, but you need to get the SP boost out, and when you don't get it out, his damage is very, very low. It's not even funny. And let's say you guys don't have Yamamoto. What can we actually use in this kind of case? Again, let us remind ourselves, do not bring speed characters, otherwise this is going to suck. Let's check overall range characters. No, none of these characters will work here. Let's go ahead and unclick the ranged Quincy killers and just check out the overall Quincy killers. Well, there's another good alternative that you guys can use, and it's gonna be this Ichibe. Now, he's just going to have one rule active, and that is the killer effect, because do consider that this guy is a melee and a tech character, so he's already gonna be missing out on most of the rules, but he's gonna be a good alternative to have if you do not have either Yamamoto or the new upcoming Ulquiorra in this kind of case. He is basically essentially the same as Sangdu in this kind of case as the Gauge character. Only difference is that in base, he just has Frenzy +1 with 50% Berserker at the end of the day, so he pretty much will play like a 2020, 2021 character in this kind of case pre-6th anniversary, but once you get the Gauge active, you do get the extra Frenzy +2, an extra 100% Berserker, 50% SP boost, and you do get the strong attacks back, just like Sangdu. So in this case, once you get the Gauge active, you're pretty much going to be set, and you're almost never going to be without the gauge. Once it runs out, just do like a couple nat hits, and then just use a strong attack, and you'll already be back in full power, and you don't even have to worry about this character. And the funny thing is that he too is a nuker, since he has bombardment with weakened defense. Obviously, nuke with this character once you have the gauge active, because you get the extra 50% SP boost, and that's gonna factor in a lot. It's crazy how slot 1 is actually gonna have you using the best of the nukers. And that's pretty much it for when it comes to Quincy killers. But what about actual power characters? Because I did say that it was a bad attribute, but there is a couple characters that we can actually make work out of, and pretty much 8th Annie Ichigo should work just fine. That being said, his damage multipliers are actually really low in this kind of case, with only having Frenzy plus 3 with 20% full stamina damage boost. But the Poise Break is actually going to be pretty useful against the mobs with Poise, so you don't even have to worry about getting attacked by them, and you just stun lock them, you get all of your hits in, and this guy can actually be quite goated. But again, the damage isn't too good, and the SA1 being the 18% shave doesn't really help too much out in his case. But guess what? We have ourselves a pretty good alternative for power, and probably, I want to say it's the better alternative in this case compared to Yamamoto, maybe even Ichibe, considering she at least has 2 of the rules, and that's Parasol Rukia right here. That being said, do keep in mind that the SA2 in this kind of case, because it's still considered a melee attack, it's going to be nerfed, because it's a melee attack. It's just the SA2 that is just gonna play a role like as if it were a character with only 1 rule in this kind of case. But that being said, she still will get a very high damage output with having Frenzy plus 2, 80% SP boost, increased status element chance, with full stamina damage boost, Rampage. Yeah, Rampage is pretty much the reason why Rukia is actually going to be working out quite nice in this type of slot. And the one thing that Rukia will have over Ulquiorra is the fact that she does get her cooldowns back when moving in between the quest areas, because she does have this skill right here, and it's going to be quite good, and it's going to be very favorable for her. That being said, she's not immune to weakening, so you guys will have to be careful about that when using her. Heck, same thing can be said about Ichibe. To sum it up, the real best alternatives to use for slot 1 has to pretty much be between Yamamoto, Ichibe, and Rukia. But now, let's just go over slot 2 real quick. Slot 2 this time around only has 2 rules, being speed and killer effect. So we have a lot more doors open up for when it comes to talking about the kind of replacements to use over Sangdu. So why don't we go ahead and filter for overall speed holo killers? Well, there are 2 characters that fit the criteria that can actually work just fine. Senjumaru and Ulquiorra. Going over Senjumaru, keep in mind, this character cannot inflict status elements, but she does have Frenzy plus 2 with 100% pure damage and 50% Berserker. So a pretty good damage output. It's gonna be nice for the starting stages, but once you go past stages 20, the bosses will actually be a bit more difficult to take down. So there's that, but she's still gonna be a really good character to use if you do not have Sangdu. And of course, going into Ulquiorra, he too has all the rules. That being said, the damage output is going to be the same as the 1000-year blower Yama, but because he has all the rules active, I do think that this character is actually going to be okay, good-ish to use. You need to get the 80% SP boost, but you can get it out. And also, since this guy has Long Stride, you can easily slap on him full stamina SP and not have to worry about it. And he's also going to be a better nuking character compared to Sangdu and Senjumaru. So that's the holo killers that we have available, and no one else. I do not recommend any of the other holo killers. If you're thinking about using 5th Annie Byakuya, you're dead wrong. Not gonna work. So, yeah. What about overall speed characters without the holo killer? Well, the doors open up even more, because look at what we have. One of the best characters in the game, Yachiru Unohana. This character has Rampage with Frenzy plus 2, 80% SP boost. The trap mechanic, good for getting weakening out. Extra cooldown reductions. Very fast character too, so this is going to be your best alternative if you do not have Sangdu. No doubt in my mind that this character will do just fine. And in terms of overall speed characters besides her, well, you can use Macy. You can actually use her. That being said, it is better if you use Yachiru Unohana, and in this case, use Macy for slot 3, because she does have the extra cooldown reduction.
and of course, you know, her damage output isn't going to be as high, but she can work. She will actually put in quite the work in terms of the damage that she can do. So, again, fantastic character. What else can we use in terms of speed characters? Tensa, he's going to be a weaker Senjumaru, so there's that. But his damage output should still be okay, but he's going to struggle a lot more in the tougher bosses, so there's that to take into consideration. Uryu can work. That being said, his gauge effect is going to be a bit weaker compared to Sangdu and Ichibe, so you guys need to be wary about that. And then that's pretty much about it. That's all the best speed characters that you can use. But now, what about overall holo killers? Because you can use any holo killer you want as long as it's not a power character. So keep that in mind. Let's take a look at the other attributes, and the doors open up even further, and I do think that Yuha is going to be one of the better alternatives, potentially even at max transcended, that you can use over Ichigo as well, because this guy, keep in mind, he has the double soul bomb mechanic. That being said, he won't be as strong because he's not a speed character and he's only getting the killer effect. But even then, I think he should be fine still because he has the 960 into homing vortex, full screen, suction vortex, the defeated enemy bonus. He already has in base 40% berserker with frenzy +2 and 80% SP boost. Once you kill 80 enemies, you get the extra soul bomb, which is so damn valuable. And then an extra 20% melee damage, an extra 40% berserker, and an extra devastation of 60%. And he already has weakened defense as well, plus an extra 60% devastation, so 120% as a whole. You can use this guy to nuke in Limit Breaker Quest, and because he's carrying a double soul bomb, yeah, he's gonna actually nuke out some really good maps with this character. And he also has Long Stride, so yeah, again, the damage isn't going to be as high as Unohana in this kind of case, but he's going to work out just fine. And then, guess what? You can also make use of this Ruruka right here. She is basically a mini Yuha, mini Killgate in this kind of case because she does have the defeated enemy bonus, just no extra soul bomb. But she has this, like Ulquiorra, team party increased strong attack damage of 20%, so she's buffing everyone and your other characters. So she might actually be quite good. Good damage output, 40% Berserker, plus she gets an extra full stam 20, Berserker 20. She also has full stam 30, thanks to the soul trait, Frenzy +2, 80% SP boost, weakened defense. Yeah, she's a really good character. And then the other characters that you can use beside Yuha and Ruruka, Rengiku, we can kind of state the same case as Tensa and Senjumaru, but at that point, just use Tensa over this character if I'm being 100% honest. And then Bruno, I do think he's a bit weaker, but can work. Quincy Ichigo, I don't think he's going to be as effective because he does not have the increased status element chance, and you want him to proc status elements non-stop in terms of getting the best damage output there is. That's basically it for when it comes to the slot 2 characters that you can use as alternatives.
And then lastly, we have slot 3, and thankfully this time around, because we're dealing with Mind Soul Reapers, you can use anyone, so you don't have to worry about the rules too much. Like I stated before, the best character to use, theoretically, is going to be this true Shikai Ichigo, but because we have no rules to work around with, we can actually get away with using some characters that can buff specific attributes. So let's say you guys have the new Ulquiorra, and you guys have Sangdu. You guys can get away with using the likes of Macy and Parasol Rukia. Parasol Rukia should work out just fine in slot 3. That being said, there is one big problem when it comes to using the character in slot 3, and it's the fact that you do not get the increased status element chance against technique attribute enemies, because the enemies are going to be Mind Soul Reapers. So unfortunately, that is the biggest downfall for when it comes to using this character. You will only just have a flat Frenzy +2 with 80% SP boost. You cannot take advantage of being able to do an extra, 40% more damage? Yeah, 40% more damage to frozen enemies. You're just buffing Ulquiorra's cooldown reductions and actually allowing him to get his strong attacks back when he gets his turn next. So yeah, you can use her. That being said, do keep in mind that her proccing isn't going to be as consistent as you could get away with in slot 1. The only good thing is that at least her second strong attack is going to work as fine as all the other strong attacks. And then Macy, well, in this kind of case, I don't think you need her if you have Sangdu and plan to bring him in slot 2, because he has the gauge, and once you activate the gauge, he's always going to get his cooldown reductions back no matter what. But let's say you do run the likes of Yachiru Unohana for slot 2, Macy is actually going to be really good because she also does the same thing as Rukia, because she will shorten herself and Yachiru Unohana's cooldown reductions and will pretty much make it so that way the strong attacks are available at your disposal the next time you get to use these kind of characters. That being said, Macy will not have the increased status element chance in general. Even then, she never had it as a 6-star ability, but because she has the 960 into Homing Vortex, it makes it so that way it's easy to get the damage to weaken enemies and the damage to paralyzed enemies of 40% at all times, especially against the harder mobs that you can pretty much defeat. And considering you don't even have to worry about typing disadvantage or anything, this character can actually work out really nicely. That being said, you do need to give her long stride to go ahead and flash step through the maps. And the only sucky thing is that this character has an 18% shade. Her damage is going to be a bit lower compared to Parasol Rukia because she doesn't have Rampage, but she should still work fine. Let's say you don't plan to bring the characters that can reduce the cooldown reduction when moving in between maps. Yuha is also going to be an amazing alternative regardless because of the double soul bomb effect that he can do. Plus, let's be honest here, slot 3 has no rules, meaning that this character will work better in slot 3 than he could ever do in slot 2. So you're going to get all of your damage output, nothing is going to be nerfed. The only difference is that you don't have typing advantage in Killer, but again, you don't even have to worry about this. So if you guys have him max transcended, I'm definitely going to say that he's the go-to for slot 3. Matter of fact, I've been using this character for every single instance in slot 3, and he just does not disappoint at all. He is just that guy and is the best character in the game. And then let's say you don't have any of the other characters, you can also make use of this Valentine's Day Ruruka, which she gives out an extra team party increased strong attack damage of 20%. Now with the coming of Ulquiorra, we don't know if it does stack, but maybe once we get around to it, we can actually test this out and see if this will work. So that way you can actually make use of both Ulquiorra and Ruruka, just so that way once you kill every single enemy mob, we can see if that team party does stack and help out every other unit. But besides that, she's basically a mini Yuha, just doesn't provide the extra soul bomb, but is going to be a ridiculously good character to use for slot 3. And considering she's going to be back in this upcoming end of month gacha, getting her and duplicates of her will do you good favors. If you get her max transcended, it's going to be a big ass W. Ichibe will work in slot 3, will work even better than mentioned in slot 1, so you can make use out of this character just fine. Yachiru Unohana will also still work just fine in slot 3. You don't even have to worry about any of the rules. And then you can use your good old classic Kilgay, who is just going to be a god for limit break request. I've already talked about Yachiru Unohana and Kilgay on multiple videos. I think you guys already understand the idea of how broken these characters are. They're still one of the best Rampage characters that you can actually use in the game. Anywho, in terms of team composition, it's actually going to be very limitless because you can actually work around and see what team will get you far, but the best team has to pretty much be between Ulquiorra, Sangdu, and Ichigo. And then what you can pretty much do is work that way around, and if you don't have Ichigo but have Yuha, you can replace Ichigo for Yuha and still have Ulquiorra and Sangdu. Or if you don't have Yuha, well, you can use Kilgay in this kind of case, which will work out just fine. We'll actually have the Rampage, and he'll still be quite good. Just a bit slower than Ichigo in this kind of case, but at least he'll get away with the cooldown reductions. So there's that. And then, of course, the team that I want to test out the most has to pretty much be between Ulquiorra, Yuha, and Ichigo, which is still going to be a really good team. Since Yuha is not a speed character, he will actually have -1 rule in this kind of case, but I definitely want to give it a shot, so that way I can have the double soul bombs, and Ichigo can still just nuke out things with this SA3 of his. And, yeah, there's just so many ways to build up your team. You can even go with a team of Ulquiorra, Yachiru, and Yuha. Or you can even just use the same team, but replace Yuha for Macy. And if you want to get away with having more cooldown reductions for Ulquiorra, you can slide in Parasol Rukia. And if you don't have Ulquiorra, use Rukia in slot 1, and then slot 2 Sangdu, slot 3 Yuha, and then let's say you don't have Sangdu, you can use Ichiru and then Macy. Or you can just use Sangdu and Ichigo directly while still having Rukia in slot 1. There's just a good amount of ways you can build up your team. But if anything, my main team is going to focus on having Ulquiorra, Sangdu, and Ichigo, or have Yuha in slot 2 and still keep Ichigo in slot 3. That's going to be my team compositions that I plan to use. Anywho, that's basically about it. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope this has actually given you a good idea on what to do for this upcoming limit break request. So yeah, take care lads, peace out, bye, sayonara, ciao ciao.